Bullets ripped through the helicopter. Elena Vasquez screamed as the aircraft spiraled toward the frozen mountains. In the wreckage, her canine partner Thor lay dying, his shattered leg pinned beneath twisted metal blood pooling on the snow. But his jaws never released his collar. Inside it, evidence that could destroy the man who ordered this hit. Her own commander. 3 miles away, Captain Dominic Crane lowered his binoculars and smiled. The blizzard would bury them by morning. No witnesses, no evidence, no survivors. He was wrong. In a cabin buried beneath the snow, a Navy SEAL heard the crash, and he was already moving. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments so we can see how far this story has traveled. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe and stay until the very end. The bullet punched through the helicopter's tail rotor at exactly 7:47 p.m. Elena Vasquez felt the impact before she heard it. The aircraft shuddered violently, throwing her against the harness straps. Warning lights exploded across the instrument panel. Alarms screamed, and in that split second she knew. "Thor!" she shouted over the chaos. "Stay down, boy!" The German shepherd in the rear compartment pressed himself flat against the floor. His dark eyes fixed on her, trusting her completely, even as the world spun out of control. Another bullet ripped through the cockpit door, then another. Elena yanked the cyclic hard left, trying to gain altitude, trying to escape the kill zone. But the damage was done. The tail rotor was gone. She was flying a metal coffin. "Mayday, mayday, mayday!" Her voice cracked through the radio. "This is Air Unit 7, Lieutenant Vasquez. I'm taking fire over the northern ridge. Repeat, taking hostile fire. Position." The radio exploded in a shower of sparks. Someone had shot out the antenna. They knew exactly what they were doing. Elena's hands moved on instinct, years of training taking over where conscious thought failed. She cut the engine to prevent a fireball. She aimed for the clearest patch of snow she could see through the swirling white. She whispered a prayer she hadn't spoken since childhood. And then the mountain rose up to meet her. The impact was violence made physical. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Elena's head slammed forward against the instrument panel, and the world went dark around the edges. She tasted blood. She felt cold rushing in through a dozen wounds in the aircraft's skin. But she was alive. "Thor!" she gasped, fighting to turn her head. "Thor, talk to me." A weak whimper answered her, then a sound that made her heart stop, the wet, labored breathing of an animal in terrible pain. Elena clawed at her harness with numb fingers. The buckle was jammed. She pulled harder, feeling something shift in her ribcage, feeling the bright spark of broken bones grinding together. She didn't care. She had to get to him. "I'm coming," she said through gritted teeth. "I'm coming, buddy. Just hold on." The harness finally released. Elena tumbled sideways, catching herself on the shattered doorframe. The cockpit was tilted at a crazy angle, half buried in snow. Fuel leaked somewhere behind her. She could smell it, sharp and dangerous. They had minutes, maybe less, before the whole thing caught fire. She crawled toward the rear compartment. What she found there nearly broke her. Thor lay on his side, his magnificent sable coat matted with blood. His right hind leg was twisted at an impossible angle, bone visible through torn flesh. A piece of shrapnel had buried itself in his flank. His breathing came in short, desperate gasps. But his eyes, those intelligent, loyal eyes, were fixed on her face. And even now, even dying, his tail gave one weak thump against the floor. "No," Elena whispered. "No, no, no. Not you. Please God, not you." She pulled herself to his side, ignoring her own injuries, ignoring the growing smell of fuel. Her hands found his face, cradling his massive head in her lap. "You're okay," she lied, her voice breaking. "You're going to be okay. We're going to get out of this. We always do right. Remember Bozeman? Remember when that suspect thought he could outrun you? You caught him in 30 seconds flat." Thor's tail thumped again. Weaker this time. Elena pressed her forehead against his. Tears froze on her cheeks before they could fall. 5 years, she whispered. 5 years you've had my back. You've saved my life more times than I can count. You're not allowed to leave me now. You hear me? That's an order. Thor licked her hand once. A promise. Then his jaws clamped down on something, his own collar, she realized. He was gripping the metal tag with fierce determination, refusing to let go, even as his strength faded. The collar. The evidence. Elena's blood ran cold. She had almost forgotten. The micro SD card hidden in the lining of Thor's collar, the evidence that could destroy Captain Dominic Crane and his entire network. Bank records, shipping manifests, photos of children, testimonies from survivors. Everything she needed to bring down the monster who had been hunting children under the protection of his badge. Thor knew. Somehow the dog understood exactly what he was protecting. He had gripped that collar through the crash, through the impact, through his own agony. He would die before he let it go. "Good boy," Elena choked out. "The best boy. You keep holding on to that, okay? Don't you dare let go." Outside, the wind howled like something hungry. Elena knew she needed to move. She needed to get them out of the wreckage before the fuel ignited. She needed to find shelter, find help, find some way to survive the night. But her body was failing her. The adrenaline was fading, and in its place came the terrible weight of her injuries. The broken ribs, the gash on her head that was still bleeding freely, the cold creeping into her bones like a slow poison. She had maybe an hour before hypothermia took her, maybe less, and Crane's men were out there somewhere, the ones who had shot her down. They would be coming to confirm the kill, to retrieve the evidence, to make sure she never testified against their master. Elena Vasquez had never felt so alone in her entire life. She thought about her sister. 8 years old, vanished from a playground in broad daylight. Never found. The case that had driven Elena to become a cop in the first place. The ghost that had haunted her for 23 years. She thought about the children in those files, the ones Crane was trafficking, the ones she might have saved if she had just been faster, smarter, more careful. She thought about dying in this frozen wilderness, her evidence lost forever, her sister's memory unavenged. "I'm sorry," she whispered to no one, to everyone. "I'm so sorry." Thor whimpered and pressed closer to her, his body heat the only warmth left in the world. And somewhere out there in the heart of the blizzard, a man named Cole Archer lifted his head and listened. 3 miles away, the cabin sat buried in snow like a forgotten secret. Cole Archer had lived here for 2 years. 2 years since the mission in Kandahar that had killed every member of his team. 2 years since he had carried his best friend's body through a firefight and watched the life drain from his eyes. 2 years since he had stopped being a Navy SEAL and started being a ghost. The cabin had no phone, no internet, no connection to the world that had broken him. Just 4 walls, a stone fireplace, and the silence he needed to keep the memories at bay. And the dogs. Shadow and Ghost had come to him 6 months ago, 2 German shepherd puppies abandoned in a cardboard box by the highway. Someone had left them to die. Cole had found them by accident, heard their crying from inside his truck, and pulled over before he knew what he was doing. He had told himself he was just going to take them to a shelter. Just drop them off and drive away. He wasn't ready for the responsibility. He wasn't ready to care about anything again. That was 6 months ago. Now Shadow slept at the foot of his bed every night, and Ghost followed him everywhere, like a small, furry shadow of her own. They had saved him. He knew that now, in ways he couldn't explain and didn't try to. They had given him a reason to wake up in the morning, a reason to keep breathing when the nightmares came. Tonight, Cole sat by the fire, cleaning his old hunting rifle, listening to the storm rage outside. Shadow lay at his feet, a 5-month-old male with sandy brown fur and sharp black markings around his muzzle. His sister Ghost curled nearby, darker and smaller, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. The wind screamed, the windows rattled. Cole didn't flinch. He had weathered worse storms in worse places. This was just weather. Then Shadow went rigid. The puppy's head snapped up, ears pricking toward the door. A low growl rumbled in his chest, something Cole had never heard from him before. Ghost followed a second later, rising to her feet, her tail stiff and still. Cole set down the rifle receiver. His hand moved automatically to the pistol on his belt. "What is it, boy?" Shadow whined, pressing his nose toward the door. His whole body trembled with an urgency Cole recognized. He had seen military dogs do the same thing, right before an ambush, right before a bomb went off, right before everything went to hell. Dogs knew things. They sensed what human instincts had forgotten how to feel. Cole crossed to the window and looked out into the white chaos. He couldn't see anything. The blizzard had swallowed the world whole. But then he heard it. A distant sound almost lost in the wind. An impact. An explosion. Something that didn't belong to the mountain's voice. His pulse shifted. The old training surged back like electricity through dead wires. He pulled on his insulated jacket, his tactical boots, his thermal monocular. He checked his pistol, grabbed a flashlight, and opened the door. The cold hit him like a physical blow. The wind tried to push him back inside. The snow swirled so thick he couldn't see 10 feet in any direction. None of it mattered. "Stay," he told the dogs. "I'll be back." Shadow barked once sharp and insistent. Ghost whimpered, but they obeyed, watching him from the doorway as he stepped into the storm. Cole had learned long ago to trust his instincts. Those instincts had kept him alive through 12 years of combat in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. They had failed him only once the night his team died. He had ignored a warning that night. He would never ignore another. He leaned into the wind and walked. It took him 20 minutes to crest the ridge. 20 minutes of fighting the storm, his breath freezing in his beard, his fingers going numb inside his gloves. He almost turned back twice. Almost convinced himself he had imagined the sound. Then the wind parted for a single heartbeat and he saw it. A helicopter, or what was left of one. Broken clean in half, its tail buried in a snowdrift, its cockpit smoldering with dying flames. Police markings on the side, a hole in the fuselage that looked like it had been made by gunfire. Cole slid down the slope, his boots carving tracks in the powder. The smell of burning metal and fuel filled his lungs. His flashlight beam cut through smoke and snow, landing on shapes inside the wreckage. A woman, unconscious, slumped against a twisted seat frame, blood on her face, ice in her hair. Her hands clutched something, a dog, he realized. A German shepherd, barely breathing, his coat matted with blood. Cole moved without thinking. He cleared the shattered glass, felt for a pulse in the woman's neck. Weak, but there, fluttering like a bird's heartbeat. "Hang on," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "I've got you." He looked at the dog. The animal's eyes were open, locked onto Cole's face, with an intensity that made him pause. This was no ordinary pet. This was a trained canine, a working partner. Cole had operated with dogs like this overseas. He knew the look in their eyes, the intelligence, the loyalty that ran deeper than blood. The dog's jaws were clamped around his own collar, holding it like it was the most important thing in the world. "Easy, boy," Cole murmured. "I'm going to help you." The dog studied him for a long moment. Then slowly, his tail gave one weak thump. Permission. Trust. Cole lifted the woman first, hoisting her across his shoulders in a fireman's carry. She was lighter than he expected, all tension and determination, even unconscious. Then he gathered the dog in his arms, careful of the shattered leg, the shrapnel wound. The dog whimpered once, but didn't struggle. He understood. Somehow, on some level, that had nothing to do with words, he understood that Cole was trying to save them. The walk back was the longest of Cole's life. The wind fought him every step. The snow blinded him, disoriented him, tried to lead him in circles. His shoulders screamed with the weight of two bodies. His lungs burned with cold. But he kept moving. One breath, one step, one more life to carry. He had done this before. In other storms, under other skies, carrying other wounded souls out of fire. He had lost men. He had failed missions. He had made mistakes that cost lives. Not tonight. Tonight he would bring them home. Shadow and Ghost were waiting at the cabin door when he finally staggered out of the blizzard. They barked frantically, circling his legs, sniffing the wounded strangers with anxious curiosity. "Move," Cole gasped. "Move." He kicked the door open and stumbled inside, laying the woman on the bearskin rug near the fire. The dog he placed gently beside her, positioning him so the heat would reach his wounded body. The two puppies rushed forward immediately. Shadow pressed his nose against the woman's hand, whimpering softly. Ghost crept toward the wounded shepherd, her body language, tentative, submissive. She licked his muzzle once, twice, then curled up against his side, as if trying to share her warmth. Cole watched them for a moment, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. Then he got to work. He stoked the fire until the flames roared. He checked the woman's vitals again, pulse weak but steady breathing, shallow but regular. He cleaned the blood from her temple, found the gash beneath her hairline, and dressed it with supplies from his medical kit. Her eyes flickered under closed lids. A murmur escaped her lips, something that might have been a name. "You're safe," Cole told her quietly. "Whoever did this to you, they can't reach you here." He turned to the dog. The injuries were worse than he had feared. The shattered leg would need surgery, real surgery, not field medicine. The shrapnel was embedded deep and infection was already a risk. The animal had lost a lot of blood, but the dog was still conscious, still holding that collar in his jaws, still watching Cole with those fierce, intelligent eyes. "You're a fighter," Cole said, cutting away the frozen fur around the wound. "I can see that. You don't give up, neither do I." He worked for over an hour, cleaning wounds, applying pressure, administering antibiotics from his kit. The dog endured it all without a sound, his gaze never leaving Cole's face. When it was finally done, Cole sat back against the wall, exhausted beyond words. The fire crackled. The wind howled outside. The three dogs, Ranger, Scout, and Nova, had arranged themselves in a protective circle around the unconscious woman, their bodies pressed together, their breath rising and falling in sync. And the woman, her name was on her jacket, he noticed now. Brooks. No, wait. Vasquez. Lieutenant Elena Vasquez, Aspen Police Aviation Unit. No. Montana. The jacket said Montana Search and Rescue K-9 Unit. Cole studied her face in the firelight. Strong features, stubborn jaw. A scar above her eyebrow that looked old. Even unconscious, she looked like someone who didn't know how to quit. He wondered what story had brought her here. What secret had made someone shoot her out of the sky? Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, the cabin held its warmth like a promise. Cole didn't sleep. He sat by the window, rifle across his knees, watching the blizzard and waiting. The night was long, but dawn would come, and when it did, he would have questions that needed answers. Elena woke to pain. It came in waves, sharp in her ribs, dull in her head, hot along her arms where cuts had scabbed over. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling above her was made of rough pine logs, dark with age. The air smelled like wood smoke and antiseptic. Then memory crashed back. The helicopter. The bullets. Thor. She tried to sit up and nearly screamed. "Easy." A voice from somewhere nearby. Deep calm, carrying the kind of authority that came from too many years in too many hard places. "You've got broken ribs, maybe 3. Moving fast is a bad idea." Elena turned her head slowly, carefully, and found a man watching her from across the room. He sat in a wooden chair, a rifle resting across his knees, his eyes the color of gunmetal and just as unreadable. He was maybe 40, built like a soldier with a close-trimmed beard and a scar under his jaw that disappeared into his collar. His face was weathered, angular, handsome in a hard way. But it was his stillness that struck her most. He didn't fidget. He didn't shift. He sat like a man who had learned to wait for hours, for days, for however long it took. "Who are you?" Elena rasped. "Cole Archer. This is my cabin." He nodded toward the fire. "Found you in the wreckage about 3 miles west. You and your partner. Thor." Elena's heart lurched. She twisted toward the sound of breathing beside her and found him, her dog, her partner, her best friend, lying on a blanket near the hearth. His leg was splinted, his flank bandaged, his breathing labored but steady. And curled against him were 2 smaller shapes. Puppies, she realized. German Shepherd puppies pressed against Thor's wounded body as if trying to protect him with their warmth. "He's stable," Cole said, reading her fear. "I've done what I can. The leg is bad, he'll need a real vet if he's going to keep it. But he's a fighter. He wouldn't let go of that collar, not even when I was working on his wounds. The collar, the evidence. Elena's hand shot to her throat, her breath catching. Still there, Cole said. Whatever's in it, he's guarding it with his life. Elena closed her eyes. Tears burned behind her lids, but she forced them back. There would be time to cry later. Right now, she needed to think. She needed to plan. She needed to survive. What time is it? She asked. Almost noon. You've been out for about 14 hours. 14 hours. That meant Crane knew by now. Knew she had survived. Knew his ambush had failed. He would be sending men to finish the job. I need to go, Elena said, trying to push herself up. Pain exploded through her chest. The world spun. She collapsed back onto the rug, gasping. You're not going anywhere, Cole said flatly. Not in your condition. Not in this storm. You try to walk out of here right now, you'll be dead in an hour. You don't understand, her voice cracked. They're coming. The people who shot me down. They're not going to stop until they find me. Cole's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A sharpening, an awareness. Who's they? Elena hesitated. Every instinct told her not to trust anyone. Crane had taught her that. Crane, who had been her mentor, her commanding officer, the man who had put Thor in her arms 4 years ago. Crane, who had smiled at her and called her his best pilot while running a child trafficking network under the department's nose. But this man had saved her life, had carried her through a blizzard, treated her wounds, kept her alive when she should have died. She owed him the truth. Captain Dominic Crane, she said, head of the Montana K-9 Bureau, my commanding officer. Cole's jaw tightened. Your CO ordered a hit on you. I found something I wasn't supposed to find. Evidence. Bank records, shipping manifests, photographs. She swallowed hard. He's been using police K-9 transport vehicles to move children across state lines. Nobody checks those trucks. Nobody questions them. The dogs provide perfect cover for the shipments. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the fire seemed to quiet. How many children? Cole's voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know. Dozens at least. Maybe more. Elena's throat burned. I have everything on a micro SD card. Enough to put him away for life. Enough to save the kids who are still out there. And it's in the dog's collar. He's been wearing it since I left headquarters. I didn't trust anyone else to protect it. Cole looked at Thor. The big shepherd's eyes were open now, watching them both with that fierce, loyal gaze. His jaws still gripped the collar tag. He knows what he's carrying, Cole said quietly. Dogs always know. Elena felt a flicker of something, recognition maybe. Understanding. You were military, she said. SEAL, retired. What happened? For a long moment, Cole didn't answer. He just stared at the fire, at the dancing flames, at something far away that only he could see. I lost my team, he said finally. Bad intel. Ambush. I was the only one who walked out. A muscle jumped in his jaw. So I came here. To forget. To stop. But you didn't stop, Elena said softly. You heard the crash. You came out into the storm. You saved us. Cole shook his head. Couldn't not. Once a soldier, always a soldier. He met her eyes. Even when you're trying not to be. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled its endless song. Elena looked at Thor, at the two puppies pressed against him, at this stranger who had risked his life for people he didn't know. Maybe she wasn't alone after all. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance. They'll come for me, she said. Crane's men. When the storm breaks, they'll search the wreckage, and when they don't find my body, they'll start hunting. Cole's expression hardened. Let them come. You don't understand what you're up against. Crane has 6, maybe 8 officers loyal to him. Armed. Trained. They won't hesitate to kill anyone who gets in their way. Neither will I. Elena stared at him. There was no bravado in his voice, no false confidence, just a cold, certain truth. This man had killed before, many times, and he would do it again to protect the innocent. Why? She asked. Why would you risk your life for me, for evidence you've never seen, for children you've never met? Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with something old and deep. Because I've seen men like Crane before, wearing medals while burying bodies, using their rank to hurt the people they swore to protect. He looked at Thor, at the brave wounded animal still guarding his precious cargo. And because once, a long time ago, someone risked everything to carry me out of the fire when no one else would, I didn't deserve it. His eyes met hers. Maybe you do. Elena felt something crack in her chest. Not her ribs, something deeper. Something that had been frozen for a long, long time. Thank you, she whispered. Cole nodded once. Get some rest. When the storm breaks, we need to move. He turned back to the window rifle in his hands, eyes on the white chaos beyond the glass. And Elena closed her eyes, one hand resting on Thor's warm fur, and let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they might survive this. The storm raged on. But inside the cabin, 3 dogs breathed in rhythm, and 2 broken soldiers began to find their way back to the light. The fire had burned down to embers when Thor opened his eyes. Elena felt the shift before she saw it, a slight tension in the fur beneath her fingers, a change in his breathing. She turned her head and found him watching her, those deep brown eyes filled with pain, but also with something else. Recognition. Relief. Hey, buddy, she whispered, her voice cracking. There you are. Thor's tail moved once, a weak thump against the blanket. But it was enough. Cole crossed the room and knelt beside them, checking the bandages with practiced hands. His fever's down, that's good. The antibiotics are working. Will he make it? If we can get him to a vet in the next 48 hours, yes. Cole met her eyes. But that means getting out of here. And right now, that's not an option. Elena looked toward the window. The storm still raged outside, white and endless. How long? Weather report I caught before the satellite signal died said another 12 hours. Maybe more. 12 hours. An eternity when every minute brought Crane's men closer. Shadow and Ghost had barely left Thor's side since Elena woke. The 2 puppies seemed to understand that the older dog was hurt, that he needed protection. Ghost kept her small body pressed against his wounded flank, sharing warmth. Shadow positioned himself between Thor and the door, his young eyes fixed on every sound, every movement. They've adopted him, Elena said softly. Dogs know family when they find it. Cole stood and moved to the window. Doesn't matter if they've never met before. They just know. Elena watched the 3 animals breathing together, their bodies rising and falling in sync. Something about the image made her chest ache. I had a sister, she said suddenly. Emily, she was 8 when she disappeared. Cole didn't turn, but she saw his shoulders stiffen. 23 years ago. We were at the playground near our house. I was supposed to be watching her, but I got distracted, talking to a friend. When I looked back, she was gone. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. They never found her. Not her body, not her clothes, nothing. She just vanished. The wind howled outside. The fire crackled. That's why you became a cop, Cole said. It wasn't a question. That's why I joined the K9 unit. Dogs find people. They find the lost, the missing, the ones everyone else has given up on. Elena stroked Thor's ears. I thought maybe if I worked hard enough, trained hard enough, I could save someone else's sister. Even if I couldn't save my own. Cole finally turned. His face was unreadable, but something had changed in his eyes. A softening, maybe, or recognition. When I found those files on Crane's computer, Elena continued, I saw her. Not Emily, I know that's impossible, but a girl who looked just like her. 8 years old, brown hair, missing front tooth. Her hand trembled. She was in one of the transport manifests, shipped from Montana to Nevada 3 weeks ago. Did you find her? I tried. The trail went cold at the state line. Crane's network is bigger than I realized. He has contacts in at least 4 states. Police officers, border patrol, even a few judges. Elena's voice hardened. They've been doing this for years, hiding in plain sight, using their badges as shields. Cole was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and dangerous. How did you get the evidence? Crane got careless. He left his laptop unlocked during a training session. I was supposed to be updating flight logs, but I saw a folder on his desktop. It was labeled K9 Transport Records. I thought it was just paperwork. But it wasn't. Bank transfers, photos, GPS coordinates, video files I couldn't watch for more than 30 seconds without wanting to scream. Elena closed her eyes. I copied everything to an SD card. I was going to take it straight to the FBI field office in Denver. But Crane must have realized something was wrong. He started watching me, following me. 2 days ago, he tried to have me committed to a psychiatric facility. Said I was showing signs of a mental breakdown. And when that didn't work, he arranged my last flight. Solo patrol over the northern ridge. He knew exactly where I would be, exactly when I would be vulnerable. Elena opened her eyes and met Cole's gaze. He probably expected the blizzard to finish the job. When his shooters reported that I'd crashed, he assumed I was dead. But you're not. Not yet. Cole crossed to the table and picked up a small handheld radio. I've been monitoring local frequencies since I found you. There's been chatter search and rescue bands mostly. But about an hour ago, I caught something else. He turned the dial. Static crackled, then a voice broke through. Male, calm, professional. Confirm visual on the wreckage. No bodies. Repeat, no bodies. Package is not at the site. Elena's blood ran cold. That's them. There's more. Another voice came through deeper with an edge of controlled fury. Expand the search radius. She couldn't have gone far in this storm. Check every cabin, every shelter, every hole in the ground. And remember, we need the dog alive. The data is worthless without it. Elena knew that voice. She had heard it every day for 4 years. In briefings, in training sessions, in moments when she had trusted him completely. Dominic Crane. He's here, she whispered. He came himself. Cole switched off the radio. That tells me 2 things. First, whatever's on that SD card is important enough to bring him out of hiding. And second, he's scared. Scared enough to take personal command. Crane doesn't get scared. Everyone gets scared when they're about to lose everything. Cole moved to a wooden chest in the corner and began pulling out equipment. A tactical vest, extra ammunition, a second pistol. How many men does he have? 6, maybe 8. All hand-picked. All loyal. Weapons. Standard police issue. AR-15s, Glocks, tactical gear. They train together every month. They're not amateurs. Cole loaded a magazine and slammed it home. Neither am I. Elena pushed herself up, ignoring the fire in her ribs. I can fight. You can barely stand. I didn't survive that crash just to hide while someone else fights my battle. She grabbed the edge of the chair and pulled herself to her feet. The room spun. She locked her knees and refused to fall. Give me a weapon. Cole studied her for a long moment. Then without a word, he handed her the second pistol. 14 rounds, he said. Make them count. Elena checked the chamber, felt the weight in her hands. It was heavier than her service weapon, but it would do. What's the plan? We wait for the storm to break. Then we move not to escape, but to higher ground. There's a ridge about half a mile north. Good sight lines, defensible position. If they want to come for us, they'll have to fight uphill in the snow. And Thor. Cole looked at the wounded dog, at the 2 puppies still pressed against him. We take him with us. I'll carry him if I have to. In a blizzard with his injuries. You have a better idea. Elena didn't. She hated it, but she didn't. Thor raised his head and whimpered softly as if he understood what they were discussing. His eyes moved from Elena to Cole and back again, trusting them, depending on them. We're not leaving you behind, Elena told him fiercely. Not ever. You hear me? Thor's tail thumped once. Agreement. The next 3 hours passed in tense silence. Cole checked and rechecked his weapons. Elena forced herself to eat, knowing she would need the strength. The dogs slept in their protective cluster, conserving energy for whatever came next. And outside, the storm began to weaken. It happened slowly at first. The wind dropped from a scream to a moan. The snow thinned, revealing glimpses of gray sky beyond. The world outside the cabin emerged from white oblivion like a photograph developing in reverse. Cole stood at the window watching. "It's time." Elena rose, testing her balance. The pain was still there, but she pushed it down, locked it away in a place where it couldn't touch her. She had done this before, operated through injuries that should have kept her in bed for weeks. The body could endure more than the mind believed possible. You just had to be stubborn enough to prove it. Shadow. Ghost. Cole's voice was low but commanding. The two puppies lifted their heads, ears pricked. "We're moving out. Stay close. Stay quiet." He knelt beside Thor and ran a hand gently down the big shepherd's side. "This is going to hurt, old friend, but I need you to trust me." Thor licked his hand once. Permission. Cole lifted the wounded dog as carefully as he could, cradling him against his chest. Thor whimpered but didn't struggle. The pain must have been tremendous, but he bore it in silence. Elena moved to the door, pistol ready. "I'll take point. You can barely walk. I can walk well enough to shoot." Cole didn't argue. There wasn't time. They stepped out into the dying storm, and the cold hit Elena like a physical blow. Her breath turned to fog. Her wounds screamed in protest, but she kept moving one foot in front of the other, following the faint trail that Cole had marked in his memory. Shadow and Ghost flanked them, their small bodies leaving tracks in the snow. They moved with surprising discipline, staying close, staying alert. Whatever instinct drove trained military dogs seemed to live in them too, awakened by the older shepherd's presence. They had covered maybe a quarter mile when Cole froze. "Stop." Elena halted, her finger tightening on the trigger. "What is it?" "Movement. 2 o'clock. About 300 meters. She squinted through the swirling snow. At first, she saw nothing. Then a flash of dark fabric against white. A figure moving between the trees. "One man," Cole said quietly. "Advanced scout. The rest will be behind him." "Can we go around?" "Not without leaving tracks they can follow." Cole's jaw tightened. "We have to take him out, quietly." "I'll do it." "Elena, you're carrying Thor, I'm not." She met his eyes. "I've done this before. Trust me." For a moment, she thought he would refuse, then he nodded. "Make it clean. Make it fast. Don't let him call for backup." Elena moved before she could second-guess herself. The snow muffled her footsteps. The wind covered her approach. She circled wide, coming at the scout from behind, using every trick she had learned in 15 years of law enforcement. The man never saw her coming. She hit him from behind, driving him face first into the snow. Her arm locked around his throat before he could cry out. She squeezed, feeling his struggles weaken, feeling his body go limp. He was unconscious in seconds. Elena rolled him over and recognized the face. Derek Simmons, one of Crane's most loyal officers. A man she had worked alongside for 3 years. A man who had probably helped traffic children. She took his radio, his weapon, his spare ammunition. Then she zip-tied his hands behind his back and gagged him with his own scarf. "Sleep tight, Derek," she whispered. "When you wake up, you're going to have a lot of explaining to do." She returned to Cole carrying the confiscated gear. He nodded, once approval in his eyes. "His radio," she said, holding it up. "We can monitor their communications now." "Good thinking." They continued moving faster now, urgency driving them forward. The ridge Cole had mentioned came into view, a rocky outcropping that rose above the tree line, offering clear sightlines in every direction. It took them another 20 minutes to reach it. 20 minutes of fighting through snow, of listening for pursuit, of praying that Thor's labored breathing wouldn't give out. When they finally reached the top, Cole laid Thor gently on a flat rock and immediately began checking the perimeter. Elena collapsed against a boulder, her chest heaving, her vision swimming. "We made it," she gasped. "The hard part's just starting." Cole pulled out his thermal monocular and scanned the forest below. "I count 6 heat signatures. They're spreading out, trying to encircle us. Can we hold them off?" "For a while. Long enough for help to arrive if help is coming." Elena remembered the radio Cole had mentioned, the emergency signal he'd sent before she woke up. "You contacted someone?" "NCIS Denver Field Office, Colorado National Guard. Gave them our coordinates and a summary of the situation." Cole's jaw tightened. "But in this storm with this terrain, it could be hours before they reach us." "Hours we might not have." "No, we might not." Elena looked at Thor, at Shadow and Ghost huddled against him, at Cole, already taking up a defensive position behind a snow-covered rock. She thought about the children in those files, the ones still out there, still trapped in Crane's network. She thought about Emily. "I'm not dying on this mountain," she said. "Not today. Not before I see Crane in handcuffs." Cole glanced at her. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Then let's make sure that happens." The radio crackled. Crane's voice came through calm and cold. "Elena, I know you can hear me." Her blood turned to ice. "You've caused me a great deal of trouble. You know that all those years I invested in you, all that training, and this is how you repay me." A pause, a theatrical sigh. "I really thought you were smarter than this." Elena's hand shook. She wanted to throw the radio into the snow to silence that voice forever. But information was power. She needed to hear what he said. "Here's what's going to happen," Crane continued. "You're going to surrender the dog and the data. In exchange, I'll let your new friend walk away. He's not part of this. He doesn't need to die." Cole snorted softly. Generous of him. "But if you refuse, if you make me come up there and take what's mine, then I'm going to kill you both. Slowly. And I'll make you watch while I put a bullet in that dog's head." Another pause. "You have 5 minutes to decide." The transmission ended. Elena stared at the radio, her heart pounding. 5 minutes. That was all the time they had left. "He's bluffing," Cole said. "He needs you to think you have no options. That's how predators operate. They cut off escape routes and make their prey feel helpless." "He's not bluffing about killing us." "No, that part he means." Cole checked his rifle. "But he's also scared. You can hear it in his voice. That fake calm, that theatrical control, it's a mask. Underneath he's panicking." "Why?" "Because you're still alive. Because you have evidence that could destroy him. Because every minute that passes is a minute closer to reinforcements arriving." Cole met her eyes. "He's running out of time, Elena, and he knows it." Down below, the figures were moving, closing in, taking up positions among the trees. 5 minutes, Elena murmured. "We don't need 5 minutes, Cole said. "We just need to survive until help comes." He raised his rifle and sighted down the scope. "And I'm very good at surviving." The first shot came 30 seconds later. It hit the rock beside Cole's head, showering him with fragments. He didn't flinch. He just shifted his aim and fired back. Someone screamed in the forest below. "One down," Cole said calmly. 5 to go." Elena took position beside him, her borrowed pistol steady in her hands. The pain in her ribs was distant now, overwhelmed by adrenaline. She had never been in a firefight before, not like this, not with bullets cracking past her head. But she had trained for this. She had prepared, and she had something to fight for. Thor raised his head and barked once, a deep, commanding sound that echoed across the mountainside. Shadow and Ghost pressed close to him, their small bodies trembling, but their eyes fierce. They were a pack now, all of them, bound by something stronger than blood. Another shot, another scream. Cole was methodical, precise, every bullet finding its mark. But Crane's men were advancing, spreading out, trying to flank them. "Left side," Elena shouted. 2 coming around the ridge. She fired twice. 1 man dropped. The other dove for cover. "Good shooting," Cole said without looking. "I had a good teacher." The radio crackled again. Crane's voice had lost its composure, now raw fury bleeding through the static. "You're making this worse for yourself, Elena. Every man you kill is another charge against you. By the time this is over, you'll be the criminal, not me." Elena grabbed the radio and pressed the transmit button. "Come up here and say that to my face, Dominic. Or are you too busy hiding behind your men like you've been hiding behind your badge for years?" Silence. Then a laugh, low, ugly, dangerous. Brave words from a dead woman. She threw the radio into the snow. "I'm done listening to him." "Good." Cole was reloading his movements, mechanical automatic. "Because we've got bigger problems." Elena followed his gaze. More figures were emerging from the tree line below. Not 6, not 8, at least a dozen. Where did they come from? Backup. He must have called in reinforcements from the county. Cole's voice was tight. This just got a lot harder. Elena's heart sank. A dozen armed men against 2 wounded soldiers and 3 dogs. The math was brutal. But then Thor barked again, and this time there was something different in the sound. Not a warning, not a command, a greeting. Elena looked up. Through the clouds, through the fading storm, she saw something that made her breath catch in her throat. A helicopter. Military markings. Heading straight for them. Cole heard it too. A smile, the first she had ever seen from him, crossed his face. "The cavalry's here." The helicopter roared over the ridge, its downdraft sending snow spiraling into the air. Ropes dropped. Soldiers descended. Weapons fire erupted below as Crane's men realized they were suddenly outnumbered. And through it all, Elena held Thor's head in her lap, tears streaming down her face. They had made it. Against all odds, against every enemy, against the storm itself. They had survived. The helicopter touched down in a hurricane of snow and noise. Elena shielded Thor's face with her body as soldiers poured out their weapons already trained on the tree line below. Commands echoed across the ridge, sharp and professional, the language of men who had done this 1,000 times. "NCIS, drop your weapons, get on the ground." But Crane's men weren't surrendering. Gunfire erupted from multiple positions, muzzle flashes sparking among the trees. One of the soldiers stumbled, hit in the shoulder, but kept moving. Another returned fire with controlled bursts. Cole was already on his feet, moving toward the lead officer. "Who's in command?" A woman turned her face hard beneath her tactical helmet. "Special Agent Diana Torres, NCIS Denver. You're Cole Archer." "That's right. The pilot's over there, Lieutenant Elena Vasquez. She's wounded and her K9 needs immediate medical evac." Torres nodded sharply. "Medic, we've got wounded on the ridge." She turned back to Cole. "How many hostiles?" "Started with 6. We took out 3. But reinforcements arrived about 10 minutes ago. I count at least a dozen now." "And their commander?" "Captain Dominic Crane, Montana K9 Bureau." Cole's jaw tightened. "He's the one you really want. The pilot has evidence that could put him away for life." Torres's eyes narrowed. "What kind of evidence?" "Child trafficking. He's been using police K9 transport vehicles as cover." Something cold and furious flickered across Torres's face. "Then we take him alive. I want him answering questions, not bleeding out in the snow." She turned and began issuing orders. Her team spread out, establishing a perimeter, laying down suppressive fire. The chaos of the initial assault settled into something more organized, more deadly. Elena felt hands on her shoulders. A medic, young and calm, checking her injuries. "Ma'am, I need you to lie still. You've got broken ribs, possible internal bleeding." "I'm fine," Elena said through gritted teeth. "Focus on the dog." "Ma'am, that's an order." The medic hesitated, then nodded and moved to Thor. The big shepherd whimpered as gentle hands probed his wounds, but he didn't snap. He knew help when he saw it. Shadow and Ghost stayed close, their small bodies trembling with tension. They watched the medic with suspicious eyes, ready to defend their wounded elder at the first sign of threat. "Good dogs," the medic murmured. "Very good dogs. I'm not going to hurt him." "Okay, I'm going to help." Ghost inched forward and sniffed the medic's hand. Then slowly she stepped back and allowed him to work. Elena watched, her heart aching. These puppies had known Thor for less than 2 days, but they had already bonded with him, already accepted him as pack. The loyalty of dogs never ceased to amaze her. A fresh burst of gunfire pulled her attention back to the battle. Torres's team was advancing down the slope, pushing Crane's men back toward the forest. But the resistance was fierce. These weren't ordinary criminals, they were trained officers fighting with discipline and precision, and somewhere among them was Crane himself. Elena grabbed the medic's arm. "Give me a weapon." "Ma'am, you're in no condition. Give me a weapon, or I'll take one from the next body that falls." The medic stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached down and pulled a pistol from his belt. Glock 19, 15 rounds. "Try not to get killed." Elena took the gun and pushed herself to her feet. The world tilted, but she locked her knees and refused to fall. She had come too far to collapse now. Cole appeared at her side. "What are you doing?" "Finishing this." "Elena." "Crane is down there, the man who shot me out of the sky. The man who's been trafficking children for years." Her voice shook with fury. "I'm not sitting on this ridge while someone else brings him in." Cole studied her face. Whatever he saw there made him nod once. "Then let's go together." They moved down the slope, staying low, using the rocks for cover. Torres's team had pushed Crane's men back nearly 100 yards, but the fighting was still intense. Bullets cracked through the air, men shouted. Someone screamed. Elena spotted a familiar face among the chaos. Derek Simmons, the scout she had subdued earlier. He was conscious now, struggling against his bonds, his face twisted with rage. "Crane!" he was shouting. "They've got reinforcements! Fall back! Fall back!" But there was no response. Either Crane couldn't hear him, or he wasn't listening. Cole grabbed Elena's arm and pulled her behind a boulder as a burst of automatic fire raked their position. "Stay down!" "Where is he?" Elena demanded. "Where's Crane?" Cole risked a glance over the rock. His eyes scanned the battlefield, searching for the one target that mattered. Then he froze. "There!" Elena looked. 50 yards away, half hidden behind a fallen tree, she saw him. Dominic Crane. Still wearing his tactical gear, still carrying his rifle, still radiating that cold, predatory calm. But something was different. He wasn't firing. He wasn't commanding his men. He was retreating. "He's running," Elena breathed. "He's cutting his losses." Cole's voice was grim. "His men are finished, he knows it, so he's trying to slip away while everyone's focused on the fight. We can't let him escape. We won't." They broke from cover, sprinting through the snow. Cole moved with the speed and precision of a man who had done this in a dozen war zones. Elena followed her broken ribs, screaming with every step, her vision blurring at the edges. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. 23 years of grief drove her forward. 23 years of searching for her sister, of hunting for monsters who preyed on children. Crane was one of those monsters, and tonight she was going to end him. Crane heard them coming. He spun, rifle rising, his face contorted with fury. "You," he snarled. "You ruined everything." Elena didn't answer. She just raised her pistol and fired. The bullet caught Crane in the shoulder, spinning him around. His rifle flew from his hands, landing in the snow. He stumbled, fell to one knee, blood spreading across his tactical vest. But he wasn't finished. His hand shot to his belt and came up holding a combat knife. With a roar of rage, he lunged at Elena, the blade aimed at her throat. Cole intercepted him. The two men crashed together in a tangle of limbs and fury. Cole was bigger, stronger, better trained, but Crane fought with the desperation of a cornered animal. The knife slashed across Cole's arm, drawing blood. Cole grunted and drove his elbow into Crane's face. The crack of breaking bone echoed across the mountain. Crane staggered back, his nose shattered, blood streaming down his chin. But he still held the knife. He still had murder in his eyes. "You don't understand," he gasped. "You don't understand what you've done. The people I work for, they won't stop. They'll hunt you down. They'll kill everyone you love. You think you've won. You haven't won anything." "Shut up," Elena said. She stepped forward, her pistol aimed at his heart. "Get on your knees." Crane laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "Or what? You'll shoot me. Go ahead. You think that will stop anything? There are dozens like me. Hundreds. We're everywhere, in every department, every agency, every level of government. You've taken out one man. The machine keeps running. I said, shut up. Your sister. Crane continued, his bloody smile widening. Emily wasn't it, 8 years old, brown hair, missing front tooth. Elena's blood turned to ice. I remember her, Crane said softly. Not personally, of course, but I remember the file. She was one of the first, one of the ones that helped us build the network. He tilted his head. Do you want to know what happened to her? The world narrowed to a single point. Elena's finger tightened on the trigger. Every fiber of her being screamed for her to pull it. To end him. To silence that horrible voice forever. But Cole's hand closed over hers. Don't, he said quietly. Don't give him what he wants. He knows what happened to Emily. He knows. He's lying. Cole's voice was steady, but his eyes burned with barely controlled fury. He's trying to make you shoot him, because a bullet is cleaner than prison, because dead men don't testify. Elena's hand shook. Tears streamed down her face. I need to know. I need Elena. Cole stepped in front of her, blocking her view of Crane. Look at me. Look at me. She raised her eyes to his. Your sister deserves justice, Cole said softly. Real justice. Not a quick death for the man who hurt her. A trial. A conviction. Answers. He reached out and gently lowered her weapon. Let the system do its work. For once, let the good guys win the right way. Elena stared at him for a long moment. The rage still burned in her chest, hot and demanding. But beneath it, something else stirred. Something older. Something that sounded like her mother's voice telling her to be brave, to be kind, to be better than the darkness. She lowered the gun. Cuff him, she said, her voice hollow. Cole nodded and moved toward Crane, but the captain wasn't finished. With the speed that seemed impossible for a wounded man, Crane lunged. Not at Cole, not at Elena, at the radio on Cole's belt. He ripped it free and pressed the transmit button, screaming into the receiver. This is Crane, code black, kill the witnesses, all of them. Cole's fist connected with Crane's jaw before he could say more. The captain crumpled unconscious at last. But the damage was done. The radio crackled with responses, confused voices, acknowledgments, and then silence. What was that? Elena demanded. What's code black? Cole's face had gone pale. It's a cleanup order. He's telling his network to destroy evidence, witnesses, anyone who can connect him to the trafficking ring. The children. Yes, Elena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Where are they keeping them? Cole grabbed the radio, switching frequencies frantically. Torres, come in, static. Then Torres' voice strained and urgent. Archer, we've got a problem. One of Crane's men is talking. Says there's a transport scheduled for tonight, 20 kids being moved from a warehouse in Helena to the Canadian border. What's the address? 742 Industrial Avenue, but we're 40 minutes out by air and the local PD is compromised, Cole finished. Crane has people everywhere. We're sending units, but if his people get there first, they'll kill the children to cover their tracks. The radio went silent. Everyone understood what was at stake. Elena grabbed Cole's arm. We have to go, now. Elena, you can barely stand. I don't care. Her eyes blazed with desperate determination. Those children don't have 40 minutes, they don't have 20. We have to move now. Cole looked at her, looked at the blood on her face, the pain in her stance, the fire in her eyes. He had seen soldiers with that look before, soldiers who refused to quit no matter the cost. He nodded once. Torres, he shouted into the radio. We need that helicopter, now! 3 minutes later, they were airborne. The pilot pushed the engines to their limit, racing against the clock. Elena sat strapped into a jump seat, clutching the armrest with white-knuckled hands. Every minute that passed was a minute those children might not have. Cole was on the radio coordinating with Torres's team, trying to get back up to Helena before Crane's cleanup crew. But the distances were too great. The resources too scattered. They were on their own. ETA 6 minutes, the pilot called back. Elena closed her eyes and prayed. The warehouse appeared through the helicopter's windshield like a tomb. Dark. Silent. No lights. No movement. For one terrible moment, Elena thought they were too late. Then she saw the van. It was parked at the loading dock engine, running exhaust pluming in the cold air. Two men were loading something into the back, something that struggled, something that cried out in a child's voice. "Set us down!" Elena shouted. The helicopter touched down 50 yards from the warehouse. Elena was out before the skids fully settled, her pistol in her hands, her broken ribs forgotten. Cole followed, rifle ready. The two men at the van spun toward them. One reached for a weapon. Cole shot him before his hand touched the grip. The second man raised his hands. "Don't shoot. Don't shoot. I'm just a driver. I don't know anything." "On the ground," Elena commanded. "Now." He dropped face first into the snow. Cole zip-tied his hands while Elena moved toward the van. What she found inside made her knees buckle. Children. 8 of them huddled together in the darkness, ages ranging from maybe 6 to 12. Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow, their wrists marked with rope burns. They stared at Elena with expressions that broke her heart. Fear, hope, disbelief. "It's okay," she said, her voice cracking. "It's okay. I'm a police officer. I'm here to help you." A little girl in the front, 7, maybe 8, with brown hair and terrified eyes, reached out and grabbed Elena's hand. "Are you real?" she whispered. "Are you really here?" Elena knelt down, tears streaming freely now. "I'm real, sweetheart, I promise. You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you anymore." The girl burst into tears and threw her arms around Elena's neck. The other children followed, crying, clinging, desperate for the safety they had been denied for so long. Elena held them all. Cole stood guard at the van's door, his face carved from stone. But when Elena looked up, she saw something glistening in his eyes, something that looked like tears. "There are more inside," the driver was babbling. "In the warehouse, at least a dozen more. They were going to move them tomorrow." Cole grabbed him by the collar. "How many guards are 4, maybe 5, I don't know. I just drive the van." Cole dropped him and moved toward the warehouse. Elena started to follow, but he held up a hand. "Stay with the kids." "Cole, they need you more than I do right now." He met her eyes. "I've got this." Before she could argue, he was gone, disappearing into the darkness of the warehouse like a ghost. Elena turned back to the children. The little girl was still clinging to her, sobbing into her shoulder. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Elena asked softly. "Lily." "That's a beautiful name. I'm Elena. I'm going to stay right here with you." "Okay, I'm not going anywhere." Lily nodded, her small body trembling. From inside the warehouse came the sounds of combat. Shouts, gunfire, the crash of breaking glass. Elena tensed her hand, tightening on her weapon. Then silence. 1 minute passed. 2. Elena's heart hammered against her broken ribs. The warehouse door swung open. Cole emerged, dragging 2 zip-tied men behind him. His face was bloody, his jacket torn, but he was alive. And behind him, stumbling into the light, came more children, 12 of them, blinking in the glare of the helicopter's spotlight, clutching each other's hands. "All clear," Cole said. "The guards are down." Elena let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. "All of them." "All of them." Torres's voice crackled over the radio. "Archer Vasquez backup is 2 minutes out. What's your status?" Cole looked at the children, 20 souls saved from darkness. He looked at Elena, bloodied and broken, but standing tall. He looked at the warehouse that had been a prison and was now just an empty building. "Status is good," he said into the radio. "Mission accomplished." Elena helped Lily out of the van, keeping the little girl close. The other children gathered around them, drawn to the first adult who had shown them kindness in what might have been weeks, or months, or years. "You did it," Cole said quietly, coming to stand beside her. "You saved them." "We saved them," Elena corrected. "And Thor, and Shadow, and Ghost. All of us together." The sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Backup at last. Medical teams, child protective services, the machinery of justice finally catching up. But for now, in this moment, there was only this 20 children breathing free air, held by people who would rather die than let them be taken again. Elena thought about Emily, about her sister's face frozen in memory at 8 years old. She might never know what happened to her, might never find the closure she had been searching for. But tonight, 20 other families would get their children back. 20 other stories would have different endings. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Lily tugged on Elena's sleeve. "Lady—" "Yes, sweetheart, the dogs," Lily whispered. "The mean men had dogs. They used them to scare us. Are all dogs bad?" Elena felt tears prick her eyes again. She thought of Thor, bleeding but loyal, of Shadow and Ghost, brave beyond their years, of every K9 officer who had ever used their gift to protect instead of harm. "No, baby," she said softly. "Some dogs are very, very good. And when you're ready, I'd like you to meet one. His name is Thor. He's hurt right now, but he's the bravest dog I know." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? Really? He helped save you too, even though you didn't know it?" The little girl was quiet for a moment. Then she whispered, "I'd like that." The first ambulance pulled into the warehouse lot. Paramedics spilled out, rushing toward the children with blankets and gentle hands. And Elena stood in the center of it all, a broken woman who had refused to break, watching as 20 small miracles walked toward the rest of their lives. The battle was over. But the healing was just beginning. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before Elena, white walls and fluorescent lights blurring together in her exhausted vision. She had been here for 6 hours. 6 hours of surgery for Thor. 6 hours of waiting, praying, bargaining with a god she wasn't sure still listened. Cole sat beside her, his arm bandaged where Crane's knife had caught him. Shadow and Ghost lay at his feet, their young bodies pressed together, their eyes fixed on the double doors that led to the veterinary surgical wing. They knew. Somehow they always knew. "He's strong," Cole said quietly. "I've seen dogs survive worse." Elena didn't answer. She couldn't. Every time she opened her mouth, the tears threatened to return, and she had already cried more tonight than she had in 20 years. The doors swung open. A woman in surgical scrubs emerged, her face tired but calm. Dr. Sarah Chen, the military veterinarian who had been flown in from Fort Harrison when Torres learned about Thor's injuries. Elena was on her feet before the doctor could speak. "How is he?" Dr. Chen removed her surgical cap, running a hand through sweat-dampened hair. "He's stable." The relief hit Elena like a physical blow. Her knees buckled, and only Cole's hand on her arm kept her upright. "But," Dr. Chen continued, "we couldn't save the leg. The damage was too extensive, shattered bones, severed tendons, massive tissue trauma. I had to amputate below the knee." Elena's breath caught. "He'll survive. He'll survive. He'll even walk again once he adjusts to the amputation. German Shepherds are remarkably adaptive." Dr. Chen paused, something softening in her professional demeanor. "I've worked on a lot of canines in my career, Lieutenant. I've never seen one fight as hard as yours. Even under anesthesia, his heart rate stayed strong, like he knew he had something to live for." Elena felt the tears return, but this time she didn't fight them. "Can I see him?" "He's still unconscious, but yes, he should have someone familiar nearby when he wakes up." Elena followed the doctor through the double doors. Cole stayed behind, but she felt his eyes on her back, steady, supportive, asking nothing. Thor lay on a surgical table, his great body looking smaller somehow, diminished by the bandages and the missing limb. His chest rose and fell with the slow rhythm of medicated sleep. An IV dripped fluid into his foreleg. Monitors beeped softly, marking each precious heartbeat. Elena pulled up a chair and sat beside him, taking his paw in her hands. "Hey, buddy," she whispered. "I'm here. I'm right here." Thor's ears twitched, just slightly, just enough. "You did it," she continued, her voice breaking. "You held on. You kept fighting. Because of you, 20 children are going home to their families tonight. 20 kids who would have disappeared forever if you hadn't protected that evidence." She pressed her forehead to his fur, breathing in his familiar scent, blood and antiseptic now, but still him. Still her partner. "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry you got hurt. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. But I promise, you're never going to be alone again. No matter what happens, no matter where we go, we're a team, forever. Thor's paw moved in her hands. A slight pressure, a squeeze. Elena looked up and found his eyes open, groggy, unfocused, but looking at her. Looking at her with the same love and loyalty that had never wavered in 5 years. His tail gave one weak thump against the table. "There you are," Elena whispered. "There's my brave boy." She stayed with him until dawn began to lighten the hospital windows. Stayed until his breathing deepened into natural sleep. Stayed until Cole appeared in the doorway, a cup of coffee in each hand. "Torres called," he said quietly. "The evidence on that SD card, it's even bigger than we thought." Elena didn't move. "How big?" 37 names, officers, judges, politicians. A network stretching across 5 states. Cole's voice was grim. "They've already made 14 arrests, more coming. And the children, the task force has reopened cases going back 15 years. They've found 7 more kids alive, 7 families getting their children back. 7 more miracles, 7 more stories with different endings. What about Crane? Federal custody, maximum security. His lawyers are trying to negotiate a plea deal, but Torres says the evidence is overwhelming. He's looking at life without parole, maybe multiple life sentences." Elena nodded slowly. She should have felt triumph, should have felt vindicated, but all she felt was tired. Tired and hollowed out and grateful, so grateful that Thor was still breathing. "There's something else," Cole said. He hesitated, and something in his voice made Elena finally look up. "They found a file in Crane's personal records, a file about Emily." The world stopped. "What?" The word came out as barely a whisper. Cole crossed the room and knelt beside her chair, his eyes holding hers. "I don't know the details yet. Torres said it's classified, part of an ongoing investigation. But she wanted you to know that they're looking. They're following every lead." "Is she alive?" The question hurt to ask. After 23 years, hope was almost more painful than despair. "They don't know yet, but they're not ruling it out." Elena closed her eyes. Her hand tightened around Thor's paw, drawing strength from his warmth. 23 years of searching. 23 years of dead ends and false hopes. And now finally a real lead. A chance, however small, that her sister might still be out there. "I need to see that file," she said. "You will," Torres promised. "But right now you need rest. You've been running on adrenaline for almost 2 days. Your body's going to crash whether you want it to or not." He was right. She knew he was right, but the thought of stopping, of letting go even for a moment. "I can't sleep," she said. "Not until I know, Elena." Cole's hand covered hers. "Thor needs you strong. Those kids you saved need you strong. Your sister, wherever she is, needs you strong." His voice softened. "Rest now. Fight tomorrow. That's an order." She almost smiled. "You're not my commanding officer." "No, but I am the guy who carried you through a blizzard. That has to count for something." Despite everything, a small laugh escaped her. It surprised them both. "Fine," she said. "A few hours. But then we find out everything. Together." She looked at him, this stranger who had become something else in the space of 2 days. An ally. A friend. Maybe eventually something more. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you help me? You had no reason to get involved. You could have stayed in your cabin. Let the storm do its work. No one would have blamed you." Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Because my team died thinking I would carry on the mission. Because the last thing my best friend said to me was, 'Don't let the bastards win.' Because I've spent 2 years hiding from the world, and that boy," he nodded toward Thor, "reminded me why I started fighting in the first place." He met her eyes. "You asked me once what happened in Kandahar. The truth is, we were betrayed. Our own handler sold our position to the enemy for $50,000. 7 men died because of him. I was supposed to be the 8th, but I got lucky. Or maybe I got cursed. Some days I still can't tell the difference." Elena's heart ached for him. "Did they catch him, the handler?" "He died in the same attack, caught in the crossfire he created. Cole's jaw tightened. So I never got to look him in the eye. Never got to ask him why. That's what haunted me most. Not the deaths I've made peace with death, but the not knowing. The questions that never got answered. That's why you understood, Elena said softly. About Emily. About needing answers. That's why I couldn't walk away. He stood, squeezing her shoulder gently. Get some sleep. I'll watch over both of you. Elena wanted to argue, but her body was finally surrendering to exhaustion. Her eyes were heavy. Her limbs felt like lead. She laid her head down on the edge of Thor's table, one hand still holding his paw, and let the darkness take her. She dreamed of Emily. Not the nightmare version, not the empty playground, the desperate searching, the endless years of silence. This time Emily was older, a grown woman with her sister's eyes. She was smiling. You found me, Dream Emily said. You never stopped looking. Elena woke with tears on her cheeks and sunlight streaming through the hospital windows. Thor was awake too, watching her with clear, alert eyes. His tail wagged when she lifted her head stronger, this time more certain. Hey, handsome, she murmured. How are you feeling? Thor licked her hand. His answer needed no words. The door opened and Cole entered with Torres behind him. The NCIS agent looked exhausted but satisfied, carrying a file folder thick with papers. You're awake, Torres said. Good. We have a lot to discuss. Elena straightened, ignoring the protest of her injured ribs. Tell me about Emily. Torres exchanged a glance with Cole, then pulled up a chair. What I'm about to tell you is classified. It's part of an ongoing federal investigation, and technically you shouldn't have access. But given your role in breaking this case, I convinced my superiors to make an exception. She opened the folder. Your sister was taken by a network that predates Crane's operation by at least a decade. Same methods, different leadership. They specialized in long-term placements, children sold to wealthy families overseas, given new identities, essentially erased from existence. Elena's hands trembled. Is she alive? We believe so. Torres slid a photograph across the table. This was taken 3 months ago in Vancouver. A woman matching Emily's age and description living under the name Michelle Carter. She works as a nurse at a children's hospital. No criminal record. No apparent connection to the trafficking network. Elena stared at the photograph. The woman in the image was in her early 30s, with brown hair and kind eyes. She looked nothing like the 8-year-old Elena remembered, but there was something. Something in the shape of her smile. Something that made Elena's heart stop. It might not be her, Torres cautioned. We've had false matches before. DNA testing is the only way to confirm. It's her. Elena's voice was barely audible. I know it is. We're reaching out to Canadian authorities. If she's willing to submit to testing, we could have confirmation within a week. Torres paused. But I have to prepare you for the possibility that she might not want to be found. Many survivors of trafficking choose to leave their old lives behind entirely. They build new identities, new families. Coming back can be, I don't care. Elena's eyes never left the photograph. Even if she doesn't want to see me, even if she's angry or scared or just wants to be left alone, I need to know she's alive. I need to know she's okay. That's all I've ever wanted. Torres nodded slowly. Then we'll make it happen. I promise. The next few hours were a blur of interviews and debriefings. Federal agents recorded Elena's statement. Prosecutors outlined the case against Crane. Medical staff checked her injuries and insisted she remain under observation. Through it all, Thor stayed by her side. Dr. Chen had cleared him to be moved to a regular recovery room, and Shadow and Ghost had been allowed in to visit. The 3 dogs lay together on a blanket near Elena's bed, their bodies intertwined, their breathing synchronized. Cole came and went, handling logistics, coordinating with Torres, making sure the rescued children had everything they needed. But he always came back, always checked on her, always stayed a little longer than necessary. On the 3rd day, Elena finally felt strong enough to walk. She made her way to the hospital's courtyard, Thor hobbling beside her on 3 legs. He was unsteady but determined, refusing to be carried, refusing to accept any weakness. Stubborn old man, Elena murmured fondly. Thor huffed and pressed his nose against her palm. Cole found them there an hour later, sitting on a bench in the pale winter sunlight. Shadow and Ghost were playing in a patch of snow nearby, tumbling over each other with the boundless energy of youth. "You should be resting," Cole said. "I've rested enough." Elena didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the mountains in the distance, the same mountains where she had nearly died. "When are you leaving?" Cole was silent for a moment. "How did you know?" "I saw the orders. On Torres's desk. You've been recalled to active duty. Training program for new SEALs." "I was going to tell you." "I know." Another silence. Longer this time. Heavier. "I don't want to go," Cole said finally. "For the first time in 2 years, I actually want to stay somewhere. With someone." Elena's heart tightened. "Then stay." "I can't. Not yet. There are things I still need to do. Debts I still owe to men who aren't here anymore." He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "But I'll come back. If you want me to." Elena turned to look at him. This man who had carried her through a blizzard, who had fought beside her against impossible odds, who had helped her save 20 children and maybe, just maybe, find her sister. "I want you to," she said. Cole smiled, a real smile, the first she had ever seen from him. "Then I will." Thor lifted his head and woofed softly. Shadow and Ghost immediately stopped playing and ran over, pressing their small bodies against their elder. "They're going to miss you," Elena said. "They're coming with you." Cole reached down and ruffled Ghost's ears. "If you'll have them. Dr. Chen says they're ready for formal K9 training, and I can't think of anyone better to teach them." Elena stared at him. "You're giving me your dogs. I'm entrusting them to you. There's a difference." He met her eyes. "They need a handler who knows what she's doing. I'll always just be the guy who feeds them and lets them sleep on his bed. But you can make them into something special." Elena looked at Shadow and Ghost, at their bright eyes and eager faces. She thought about the work ahead, the training, the bonding, the endless hours of learning to communicate with 2 new partners. She thought about Thor adapting to life on 3 legs, his years of active service behind him, but his heart still full of fight. She thought about Emily somewhere in Vancouver, living a life Elena knew nothing about, but hoping, always hoping, for a reunion. "I'll take good care of them," she said. "I promise." "I know you will." Cole stood brushing snow from his jacket. "My transport leaves in 3 hours. I should say goodbye now before—" "Don't." Elena rose and took his hand. "Don't say goodbye. Say see you soon. Goodbye is too permanent." Cole looked down at their intertwined fingers. When he looked up, there was something raw and vulnerable in his eyes, something she suspected very few people had ever seen. "See you soon, Elena." "See you soon, Cole." He bent down and pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle, brief, full of promise. Then he turned and walked away, his boots crunching in the snow. Elena watched him go until he disappeared around the corner. Then she sat back down on the bench. Her 3 dogs gathered around her and let herself hope. Hope for Emily, hope for Thor, hope for Shadow and Ghost and all the children they would help save. Hope for a future she couldn't yet imagine, but was finally brave enough to believe in. The sun dipped toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. And somewhere in the distance, a helicopter rose into the air, carrying a soldier toward the next battle, the next mission, the next step on a journey that was far from over. But for Elena, the journey was just beginning. She had survived the storm. She had faced the monster. She had saved the innocent and found the strength to keep going when everything told her to give up. Now it was time to rebuild. One day at a time. One step at a time. One heartbeat at a time. Thor pressed his head against her knee. Shadow and Ghost curled at her feet. The world was quiet, peaceful, full of possibility. "Let's go home," Elena said softly. And for the first time in 23 years, she knew exactly what that word meant. 6 months had passed since the blizzard. Elena stood at the window of her new office watching Shadow and Ghost run through the training yard below. They had grown into magnificent animals, strong, disciplined, eager to learn. Their natural instincts had been honed into professional skills. Next week, they would officially graduate as certified K9 officers, the first dual handler team in Montana history. Thor lay in his bed near her desk, his graying muzzle resting on his paws. The prosthetic leg Dr. Chen had fitted 3 months ago allowed him to walk without pain, though his running days were behind him. He had been medically retired with full honors, the first K9 in state history to receive a commendation for extraordinary valor in the pursuit of justice. But retirement hadn't slowed him down. Thor had become a mentor to Shadow and Ghost, supervising their training sessions, correcting their mistakes with gentle nudges, teaching them everything he knew about loyalty and courage and never giving up. The three of them were inseparable. Elena's phone buzzed. She looked down and felt her heart stop. A text from Torres. 2 words. "She's coming." Elena's hands began to shake. She set down the phone and pressed her palms flat against the desk, forcing herself to breathe. Today was the day. After 6 months of DNA tests, interviews, psychological evaluations, and endless paperwork, Emily was finally coming home. Not Michelle Carter, not the nurse from Vancouver. Emily, her sister. The girl who had vanished from a playground 23 years ago. The door opened behind her. "You okay?" Elena turned to find Cole standing in the doorway. He wore civilian clothes now, jeans, a flannel shirt, work boots. 3 weeks ago, he had completed his training assignment and requested a permanent transfer to Montana. Torres had pulled strings. The paperwork had gone through yesterday. He was staying. "I don't know," Elena admitted. "I've waited so long for this moment. Now that it's here, I'm terrified." Cole crossed the room and took her hands. "She's your sister. That hasn't changed. But everything else has. She was 8 years old when I lost her. Now she's 31. She has a whole life I know nothing about. What if she looks at me and sees a stranger? What if too much time has passed? Then you'll start over. You'll build something new." Cole's voice was steady. "The bond you shared didn't disappear, Elena. It just went underground for a while. You'll find it again." Elena squeezed his hands, drawing strength from his certainty. In the months since they had met, Cole had become her anchor, the calm in every storm, the voice that pulled her back when doubt threatened to drown her. They hadn't put a label on what they were. There hadn't been time. Between Elena's new position as head of the Interagency Task Force on Human Trafficking, Cole's training program, and the endless demands of building a case against Crane's network, their relationship had grown in stolen moments. Coffee at dawn, walks with the dogs at sunset, long conversations that stretched into the night. But they were together, in every way that mattered. Thor lifted his head and woofed softly. A moment later, Elena heard it too, the sound of a car pulling into the parking lot below. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "She's here," she whispered. Cole released her hands. "I'll give you privacy. This moment belongs to you two." "No." Elena caught his arm. "Stay, please, I need you." He nodded and stepped back, positioning himself near the window where he could watch without intruding. The door opened again. Torres entered first, her expression carefully neutral. Behind her came a woman Elena had seen only in photographs for 6 months. Emily. She was taller than Elena remembered. Her hair was darker, her face angular where it had once been round with baby fat. But her eyes, God, her eyes were exactly the same. Brown with flecks of gold, wide and expressive, holding 1,000 emotions at once. The sisters stared at each other across the room. Neither moved. Neither spoke. 23 years collapsed into a single heartbeat. Ellie. The childhood nickname broke something inside Elena. Tears flooded her eyes. Her voice came out as a broken whisper. "Emmy." Emily crossed the room in 3 steps and threw her arms around her sister. Elena caught her, held her, clung to her with 23 years of desperate longing. "I'm sorry." Emily sobbed into her shoulder. "I'm so sorry I left you. I tried to come back. I tried so many times." "Shh." Elena stroked her sister's hair, her own tears falling freely. "You didn't leave. You were taken. None of this was your fault. I remembered you. Every day I remembered. Your voice, your laugh. The way you used to braid my hair." Emily pulled back, her face streaked with tears. "They gave me a new name, a new family. They told me you were dead. They told me everyone I loved was gone. They lied. I know that now. But for so long, I believed them." Emily's voice cracked. "I was so alone, Ellie, so scared, and I didn't even know my own name." Elena cupped her sister's face in her hands, memorizing every feature, every line, every proof that this moment was real. "Your name is Emily Grace Vasquez," she said fiercely. "You were born on March 15th in Helena, Montana. Your favorite color was purple. You loved strawberry ice cream and butterflies and that stuffed elephant you called Mr. Trunk. And you were the most loved little girl in the entire world." Emily's sob turned into something that might have been a laugh. "Mr. Trunk. I forgot about Mr. Trunk. I still have him. He's at my apartment. I've kept him for 23 years. Fresh tears spilled down Emily's cheeks. "You never stopped looking." "Never. Not for one single day." They held each other again, two sisters reunited across an ocean of time and pain. The room was silent, except for their mingled crying and the soft sound of Thor's tail thumping against his bed. After a long moment, Emily pulled back and noticed the dog watching them. That's Thor. He's the reason I found you." Emily approached the old shepherd slowly, respectfully. Thor lifted his head and studied her with wise, calm eyes. "Hello, beautiful boy," Emily said softly. "I heard what you did, how you protected the evidence even when you were hurt, how you never gave up." Thor's tail wagged harder. He stretched his neck toward her, and she knelt to stroke his ears. "He likes you," Elena said. "He doesn't like everyone." "He knows." Emily looked up, her eyes shining. "Dogs always know." The words echoed something Cole had said months ago. Elena glanced at him, found him watching with a gentle smile. "Emily, this is Cole Archer. He's the one who found me in the blizzard. Saved my life. Saved Thor's life." Emily rose and extended her hand. "Thank you for everything." Cole shook it. "Your sister did the hard part. I just showed up at the right time." "That's not true," Elena said. "And you know it." Shadow and Ghost appeared at the door, drawn by the commotion. They bounded into the room with puppy enthusiasm, tails wagging noses, investigating this new person. Emily laughed a real laugh, bright and surprised, as the dogs circled her. "And who are these two, Shadow and Ghost?" "They're Thor's protégés. Next week, they officially become K9 officers. A family of heroes." Emily knelt to pet them, and they immediately began competing for her attention. "I think I'm going to like it here." The words hit Elena like a wave. "You're staying..." Emily stood, her expression suddenly uncertain. "If that's okay. I know it's a lot to ask. We barely know each other anymore. But I don't want to go back to Vancouver. There's nothing for me there. My whole life has been built on a lie. I want to start over. I want to be Emily again." Elena pulled her sister into another embrace. "You can stay as long as you want. Forever, if you need. My apartment has a spare room. It's not much, but it's perfect." Emily's voice was muffled against Elena's shoulder. "It's home." Home. The word had never meant so much. Torres cleared her throat gently. "I hate to interrupt, but there's one more thing we need to discuss." Elena and Emily separated, both wiping their eyes. "The trial starts next week," Torres continued. "Crane and his associates. The federal prosecutors want Emily to testify about her abduction. Her testimony could be crucial in connecting the old network to the current one." Emily's face paled. "Testify in front of him." "You won't be alone," Elena said quickly. "I'll be right there with you. Cole, too. And if it gets too hard, you can stop. No one will force you to do anything you're not ready for. But if I don't testify, then we'll find another way. The evidence is overwhelming. Crane is going to prison regardless. Your testimony would help, but it's not required." Emily was quiet for a long moment. Her gaze drifted to Thor, to Shadow and Ghost, to the commendations hanging on Elena's wall. All those children, she said softly. The ones you saved, the ones still out there. If my testimony can help put these monsters away forever, then I have to try. I have to. I have. Elena felt her heart swell with pride. Her sister had survived the unimaginable and emerged with her compassion intact. After everything she had suffered, her first thought was still for others. You're the bravest person I know, Elena said. I learned from the best. Emily took her sister's hand. We're going to do this together. Right. Always. The week that followed was the most intense of Elena's life. She helped Emily prepare for her testimony, walking her through every question the prosecutors might ask, every tactic the defense might use. They spent hours in Elena's apartment, going through photo albums and home videos, rebuilding the connection that time had tried to destroy. Cole was there for everything. He cooked meals when the sisters forgot to eat. He walked the dogs when training sessions ran late. He held Elena through the nightmares that still came some nights, the ones where she was back in the blizzard drowning in white. Shadow and Ghost graduated on a Thursday. Elena stood proudly as they received their badges, their tails wagging furiously, their eyes bright with the understanding that they had achieved something important. Thor sat beside her in his own retired badge, supervising his successors with calm approval. You did good, old man, Elena whispered to him. They're ready because of you. Thor licked her hand. Agreement. The trial began on Monday. The federal courthouse was packed with reporters, protesters, and families of victims. Security was heavy. Crane still had allies on the outside, people who might try to disrupt the proceedings. Elena sat in the front row, Emily on one side, Cole on the other. Torres was nearby, coordinating with the prosecution team. The air crackled with tension. When they brought Crane into the courtroom, Elena felt Emily stiffen beside her. The man who had destroyed so many lives looked smaller, somehow diminished in his orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. But his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were the same. He scanned the crowd until he found Elena. A smirk crossed his face. Elena held his gaze, didn't flinch, didn't blink. After a long moment, Crane looked away. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witness after witness took the stand. Survivors told their stories. Investigators presented evidence. The network Crane had built was exposed in all its horrifying detail: the routes, the buyers, the bribes, the bodies that had never been found. Elena testified on the 7th day. She spoke for 4 hours, describing everything from her discovery of the files to the crash, the rescue, the raid on the warehouse. When the defense attorney tried to discredit her, she shut him down with cold precision. You want to know why I risked everything, she said, her voice carrying across the silent courtroom. Because 20 children were going to disappear forever. Because my sister disappeared forever when she was 8 years old, and I spent 23 years wondering if I could have saved her. Because sometimes the only choice is to fight, even when fighting means dying. The defense attorney had no response. Emily testified on the 14th day. She walked to the witness stand with her head high, her hands steady, her eyes fixed on her sister. Elena nodded once. You can do this. Emily told the court everything. The playground, the van, the years of captivity, the false family who had raised her, the moment she learned the truth about her past. When she described the night she was taken, the fear, the confusion, the desperate screaming for a sister who couldn't hear her, Elena had to look away. Tears streamed down her face. Cole's hand found hers and squeezed. Do you see the man who was ultimately responsible for your abduction in this courtroom? The prosecutor asked. Emily turned and looked directly at Crane. Her voice was steady. Yes. Can you point him out? Emily raised her hand and pointed. That man, Dominic Crane, he built the network that destroyed my childhood. He stole me from my family. He's responsible for crimes against hundreds of children, maybe thousands. Crane's smirk was gone. In its place was something Elena had never seen on his face before. Fear. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Crane was sentenced to 14 consecutive life terms. No possibility of parole. Ever. When the verdict was read, the courtroom erupted. Families sobbed with relief. Survivors embraced. Reporters rushed for the exits, desperate to break the news. Elena sat motionless, Emily's hand in hers, watching as guards led Crane away. He didn't look back, didn't speak, just shuffled forward, head bowed, shoulders slumped. It was over. After 23 years, it was finally over. The celebration that night was quiet. Elena, Emily, Cole, Torres, and a handful of others gathered at Elena's apartment. There were tears and laughter, stories and silences, the kind of bone-deep relief that comes only after the longest battles. Thor lay in his usual spot by the fire, shadow and ghost curled against him. The old dog's breathing was slow and peaceful. He had earned his rest. "What happens now?" Emily asked, curled in an armchair with a cup of tea. "Now we heal," Elena said. "Now we build. Now we remember that the world isn't all darkness. There's light too. We just have to fight for it sometimes." Cole raised his glass. "To the light. To the light," the others echoed. Later, when the guests had gone and Emily had retreated to her room, Elena stood on the apartment balcony watching the stars emerge over the mountains. Cole joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You did it," he said softly. "You brought her home. We did it, all of us." Elena leaned back against him. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Yes, you could have. You're the strongest person I've ever met." "I'm strong because I had something to fight for, because I had people who believed in me when I stopped believing in myself." She turned in his arms, facing him. "You believed in me, Cole, from the very first moment. I saw who you were. I still see it. Every day." He kissed her, then gentle and certain, a promise sealed without words. Thor woofed softly from inside the apartment. Shadow and Ghost added their voices, a chorus of canine approval. Elena laughed against Cole's lips. "I think they're giving us their blessing." "They'd better. I already asked Thor's permission." "You did not." "I absolutely did. Last week. Very formal." He wagged his tail. "I took that as a yes." Elena shook her head, still laughing. This man, this impossible, wonderful man. The months that followed were not perfect. There were hard days, days when the nightmares returned, when the weight of everything they had survived felt crushing. Emily struggled with her identity, caught between the person she had been and the person she had become. Cole grappled with his own demons, the ghosts of Kandahar that never fully faded, but they faced it all together. Elena and Cole were married on a spring morning in a small ceremony in the mountains where everything had begun. Emily was her maid of honor. Torres gave the toast. Shadow and Ghost served as ring bearers, trotting down the aisle with perfect discipline. And Thor watched it all from his place of honor beside the altar, his collar gleaming with the new tag Elena had given him for the occasion. Guardian. The word fit him perfectly. 1 year after the blizzard, Elena received a letter. It came from Lily, the little girl she had rescued from the warehouse, the one who had asked if all dogs were bad. Lily was 10 now, living with a foster family in Billings. She was going to school, making friends, learning to be a child again. And she had adopted a German shepherd of her own. "I named her Hope," Lily wrote in careful, childish handwriting, "because that's what you gave me. Hope that the world could be good again. Hope that there are people who fight for kids like me. I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to save people too." Elena read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. This was why she had fought. This was why she had nearly died. This was why she had refused to give up, even when everything told her the battle was lost. Not for justice, not for vengeance, not even for Emily. For hope. For the chance to plant a seed in one small heart that might someday grow into a forest. She framed the letter and hung it beside her commendations, beside Thor's retirement badge, beside the photograph of her and Emily at their reunion. A reminder, a promise, a reason to keep fighting. 5 years later, Elena stood at the edge of a training field, watching Shadow and Ghost demonstrate search and rescue techniques for a group of new recruits. The dogs were in their prime, now experienced veterans who had helped save countless lives. Cole stood beside her, their 3-year-old son balanced on his hip. The boy had his father's eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. He watched the dogs with rapt fascination. "Doggy," he squealed, pointing at Shadow. "Big doggy." "That's right, buddy," Cole said. "That's Shadow. He's one of the good guys. All doggies good guys." Elena smiled and ruffled her son's hair. "Not all of them, but the best ones are. And you know what makes a dog good?" "What?" "The same thing that makes people good. Loyalty, courage, love." She glanced at Cole. "Never giving up on the ones who need you." Their son considered this with the gravity only a 3-year-old could muster. Then he nodded solemnly. "I want to be a good guy too." "You already are, little man." Cole pressed a kiss to his son's forehead. "You already are." That night, Elena sat on the porch of the cabin, their cabin now the same one where Cole had once lived alone, and watched the sunset paint the mountains gold. Thor lay beside her, his muzzle completely gray. Now his movements slow and careful. He was 13 years old, ancient for a German shepherd. The vet said every day was a gift. Elena treasured every single one. "You know what I was thinking about today," she said softly, stroking his ears. "That night in the blizzard, when Cole found us in the wreckage, I was so sure we were going to die, so certain that was the end of our story." Thor lifted his head and looked at her. His eyes were cloudy with age, but the love in them was undimmed. "I was wrong. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning." Elena smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "Because of you. Because you refused to give up. Because you held on to that collar with everything you had, even when you were bleeding, even when you were dying. You saved me, Thor. You saved all of those children. You saved Emily." Thor's tail wagged once, slow, weak, but certain. "You're the best partner I've ever had," Elena whispered. "The best friend. The best piece of my heart. And I need you to know whatever happens, wherever you go next, I will never forget you. I will carry you with me for the rest of my life." Thor laid his head on her lap and closed his eyes. His breathing was steady. His body was warm. His heart beat against her leg in that familiar, comforting rhythm. Elena sat with him until the stars came out, until Cole called her in for dinner, until the world went quiet and still. Thor passed peacefully in his sleep 3 weeks later. They buried him on the hillside overlooking the valley, in the place where he had loved to sit and watch the sunset. Shadow and Ghost stood guard beside the grave, their heads bowed, their bodies trembling with grief they couldn't express in words. Elena spoke at the service. So did Cole. So did Emily, who had grown to love Thor as fiercely as her sister had. But it was little Lily, now 15, visiting for the occasion, who said the words that mattered most. "Thor taught me that love doesn't give up," she said, her voice steady despite her tears. "He taught me that courage isn't about being unafraid. It's about being afraid and fighting anyway. He taught me that the best of us, the very best, are the ones who protect the helpless, even when it costs everything." She looked at Elena, at Cole, at Shadow and Ghost, still standing vigil. "I'm going to be a canine officer because of him. I'm going to spend my life helping people because he showed me what that means. And every dog I train, every child I save, every monster I bring to justice, that will be his legacy. That will be his gift." Elena wept. They all did. But beneath the grief, there was something else. Something warmer. Something that felt like gratitude. Thor had lived. Thor had loved. Thor had made a difference. What more could any of them hope for? The sun set behind the mountains, and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Elena stood at the edge of the grave. Cole's hand in hers, her son asleep in his grandmother's arms nearby. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. The crash, the blizzard, the battle on the ridge, the warehouse, the trial, the reunion, the 1,000 small moments of healing that had followed. She thought about the children they had saved, the families they had reunited, the monsters they had put behind bars. She thought about Emily standing strong beside her, a survivor who had become a warrior. She thought about Cole, the man who had walked into her life during the darkest storm and stayed through every challenge since. She thought about Shadow and Ghost carrying Thor's legacy forward, teaching new generations what it meant to serve. And she understood finally the truth that had been waiting for her all along. Miracles don't always come as thunder and light. Sometimes they come quietly, through a stranger who refuses to look away, through a sister who never stops searching, through a dog who guards the innocent with his last breath. Sometimes God doesn't send angels with wings. Sometimes he sends them with fur, with scars, with hearts that never doubt. In our own lives, storms will come, times when we feel lost and forgotten. But somewhere in that storm, there will always be a spark of grace waiting to be found, a hand reaching out, a soul refusing to give up, a heart that still believes. The darkness never wins, not when people choose to be the light. Elena Vasquez had learned that lesson in the worst blizzard of her life. She would spend the rest of her days passing it on. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope tonight. Leave a comment, subscribe, and may God bless you and everyone you love, because somewhere out there in a storm you can't yet see, someone is fighting their way toward you, and they will not stop, not until they find you, not until they bring you home.